Hello, this is Alan Elliott, and this is SAS Essentials Mastering SAS for Data Analytics, third edition. This is Chapter 1, Getting Started in SAS. The learning objectives for this tutorial is first to be able to use the SAS software program in a Windows environment, to understand the basic information about getting data into SAS, and running a SAS program. And we're going to look at some simple SAS programs as examples. First of all, SAS is a programming language that specializes in data analytics. There are several ways to use SAS that are not covered in this book. However, this book teaches you how to use SAS code, which provides the most flexibility for people who are going to be using it professionally in particular, or who are going to be using it, for instance, to work on a dissertation or do an analysis required for a project. So we'll be using SAS in a Windows environment, although SAS is available on another of other platforms. For instance, uh, Appendix C has a brief tutorial on a free SAS on demand for academics version, also called SAS Studio, and sometimes SAS University, that you can look at and also use almost all of the examples we use in here in the text, although it's based on SAS being installed directly on your computer, will also work in the SAS Studio version with a few exceptions. Also, there are other versions. A network version, the one that I'm familiar with, is Citrix SAS, that I'll talk about in just a minute. So again, we're going to be using it in a Windows environment, but it does run on a number of platforms, including Unix and Linux and other things. If you learn SAS in Windows, you've learned 90-something percent, now maybe 95%, 98% of everything you need to know about SAS. The only real difference typically is how files are accessed. This book is based on using SAS in the Windows environment, and we have SAS installed on our local computer. This is the vast majority of the content of the book, and will apply to any SAS environment. But the first thing you need to do before you can use the examples in this book is you need to put the data and the programs that we're going to be using on your own computer. And we've provided this information at this website, alanelliott.com/SAS lowercase. When you go to this page, you're going to see some options for getting the data. Two options. One is downloading a zipped version of the data, which we recommend. It's one simple download. Or two, you can download the SAS files in text format, one chapter at a time. If you download the zipped file, then what that does is it puts the single file, it downloads a single .zip file onto your computer, and then when you double click on it, it's often you're going to see a dialog box similar to what you have here that's asking, where do you want me to extract the data? We recommend that you enter the folder called C:/SAS data. So your data will be in a folder similar to what is referenced in the remainder of this book. Now, if you have some situation where you have to install it on a different drive, that's fine. You'll just need to realize that whenever we mention C:/C SAS data, you'll need to change that to whatever wherever you have put the data. Also notice that you enter that into the text area where it says files will be extracted to this folder, then click on the extract button and it will extract dozens of files into that folder and make them available for you for that you can use, so you can use all the examples in the book. So in general, what we're going to have is we're going to have the SAS data on our hard drive, and we're going to run and access this SAS data from the SAS program. We're going to read data from that file. We're going to write data through that folder, and so it will become very helpful to us. Again, if you're using the Studio version or some other version, it might differ slightly. Also, at some universities, for instance, the one I'm familiar with, uses a version on the network and requires that instead of you using C:// like we're using C:// SAS data, you use //client/C $. So it looks a little cumbersome, but actually after using it 2 or 3 times, you'll get used to it. So again, if you're using this kind of version, then you'll need to substitute this client string instead of the :/ whenever you see that in the text or in the examples. All right, so let's get into looking at SAS. So this, when you run SAS, double click on SAS or bring it up on your computer. This is how it's going to look. Now, if it doesn't look like this, you're in the wrong version of SAS. So make sure that you've installed and are using the version of SAS for coding. And so when you bring it up, you should see this version of SAS. It has 3 windows. The left window has 2 tabs, an Explorer and a Results tab. We'll talk about those in a minute. The upper one is the log window, which is going to give you information about how your program has run. And the program editor is the lower window where you actually are going to type or edit the code. Notice the tabs at the bottom: output, log, and editor. We don't see an output window yet because we haven't created any output. So the SAS editor, we're going to go through each of those windows. So the editor is called the Enhanced Editor or the Windows Programming Editor, WPGM. This is where you write or edit SAS code. It's like a simple word processor, like Word or Notepad. It's where you can open previously saved SAS programs or even paste SAS programs into it. The SAS code, you need to know, is stored in plain ASCII text. So when you save this SAS program, it's going to be readable by any other word processor like Word or, as I mentioned, Notepad. You can also copy or cut and paste text from another editor or word processor directly into the editor window. The log contains a report detailing how and if your program ran. The importance of the log is, in particular, if you run a program and it doesn't do what you want, then you need to go to the log window because it will show you errors that may have appeared as your program was running. So we're going to look at that more closely later, but that's the reason for the log. The Explorer or Result window, the 2 tabs on that. The result displays a tree listing your output, for instance. So for instance, if you do a lot of output, maybe 20 different things, and one of them is a histogram, you could look over there, find a little icon with a histogram on it, click on it, and it's going to display the histogram for you. So you can easily find pieces of your output. The Explorer tab displays SAS libraries. Similar to SAS folders, these libraries are where SAS data are going to be stored. The Graph window, which we haven't seen yet, often appears as a tab on the bottom, and when you create a graph, then that's going to appear, and again, you can get to it simply by clicking on the tab. The Results Viewer is a window where SAS displays the output of your SAS analysis. And you need to note that it's in HTML format. We'll talk about that later, but a hypertext markup language or internet kind of format output. And also we're going to learn how to control this output using the Output Delivery System, ODS, later on in the book. So what if you happen to close one of these windows? Whoops, you may have clicked on the upper right-hand corner, the little X up there, and your window's closed. It's not a problem. Go to the View pull-down menu and select the window you want to reopen. So let's look at a first analysis. So we're gonna go through about 4 analyses or so here, and the purpose of this is to just get you some hands-on use of a SAS program to get you starting to become familiarized with it. Now, it's going to have a lot of pieces to it, so don't worry about that. We will drill down into each of these pieces and help you learn completely what each of these pieces mean. But in general, they're going to be fairly explanatory. So let's look at how you would do this. First of all, make sure you're in the SAS editor by clicking on the tab. Then go to the File menu and choose File, Open Program, and drill down to the :/SAS data folder on your computer, and then find the file called first.sas and open it. When you open it, this is what you're going to see, this program that we're viewing here. Now let's take a closer look at this program. First of all, there's 2 parts to it. The first part is defining a simple data set, and the second part is creating some output. again, we're going to drill down into what all this means, but it's fairly explanatory. We're creating a data set called employees. It's going to contain two pieces of input, gender and age. Now, the dollar sign after the gender means that gender is going to be a text or string variable. You can think of the dollar sign as an S. Gender, string variable, and then age. And then data line says, okay, all the data is going to appear on the next few lines. So here we see the two pieces of data, male 34, male 37, on down to female 36, etc. And the data ends with a semicolon. SAS automatically highlights the data in yellow so you'll know what your data looks like. Then following that, we have proc means, which is going to do a procedure called means, which is going to calculate some statistics on the numeric values within this data set. And furthermore, we're going to classify it or break it down by gender. So taking a closer look at this, data, employees, the employee data set, input two variables, and then data line says, okay, SAS, the data is coming up. And then finally, after we've created the data set, we're going to ask for some simple statistics using a procedure called means broken down by gender. Now, to run this or to get SAS to display the output for this program, we have to submit the program. So we create a program first, then we submit it. So if you go to, you can do it in two ways. There's a run pull-down menu where you can choose run and then submit. Or simpler, you can type on or just click on this little running man icon to submit the code, and that just says SAS, okay, says to SAS, okay, now do this analysis. So when you click on that icon, SAS should display this output, and you'll notice it's means and some other statistics broken down by male and female as we asked, called the classification, female and male. Let's take a look at this first example. We won't do all the examples in the SAS program directly, but I want to do some as we go along here to get you familiar with it. So we're going to open up the file called first.sas. So I'm going to go up to the File pull-down menu and choose Open Program. And then oftentimes you'll have to drill down to wherever you have saved your data sets and program. Typically, we suggest you save it on the C drive, so I'm going to go to the C drive and to the SAS data folder. And then I'm going to scroll over to the file called first. There it is. And open that file. And you can see that it appears in a window. I'm going to maximize that window so we can see the whole program. And we'll see that, as we've talked about, we have the part that defines the data and then the part that defines the procedure. And we could either choose Run, Submit, or click on the Submit button. So I'm just going to click on the Submit button, and we can see that the results appear in the Results Viewer window. What can you do with this window? Well, you can print it, would be one thing. You can save the output, file save. You can copy and paste it into Word, PowerPoint, and so forth. Again, it's in HTML format, so you can actually paste it into a web page if you were building a web page. Later on, we're going to see how to create other kinds of output. Let's do a second example. In this case, again, make sure you're in the editor window. You can simply click on the window, the tab now that says First, and then choose File, Open Program, Second. It's going to appear in a second new window called second.sas. And we're going to see this program that you see below here, and we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to add a line to this program. You can go ahead and run the program if you want to see what it looks like, but we're going to add in this little blank space under where it says put your title on the next line. You're going to type in title, quote, hello world, comma, this is whatever your name is, end quote. It's important to have a beginning quote, end quote, and then a semicolon. Once you've typed in that information, then you can run the program and look at the output. And this is similar to what it should look like. Hello world, this is Alan Elliott. So we've shown you how to add something to your file. You've added a title here. Now let's redo this example a little bit. We're going to change the name to of the file to my data. We're going to change the name of the input variable to weight. And also because that weight has changed, we're also going to have to change it in the variable statement. So you'll see that weight is now in both spots here. And then when we run that, this is what it's going to look like. Now, it's important that when you enter this program that you pay attention to typing it in correctly. And SAS gives you hints by giving you these color clues. So you'll notice the important keywords appear in a dark blue. Other keywords appear in a light blue. The data is highlighted in yellow, and so forth and so on. Don't forget to use the run at the very end and end properly semicolons throughout. So make sure your code looks like this before you run it. If it doesn't, then it's not going to run. You can come back to your editor, change it, and run again, and hopefully you'll eventually come up with this analysis result here. All right, just to summarize, we create a data set, we use a procedure to analyze the data, and we create output. That's the basics. The basic really outline of the entire book is we're going to learn how to create data, modify data. We're going to learn how to use a bunch of procs to analyze the data, and we're going to learn how to read the output and also create output for specific ways where we want to maybe output it to Word or PowerPoint or something like that. All those things will be covered. All right, let's try another example here. In this case, we're going to type in the data, type in the code. And again, I'm having you do this. We're not going to do a whole lot of typing in of code in the various chapters, but I want you to do it a couple of times because it's important for you to get into the habit or get into the knowledge of what a SAS program looks like. So I'm going to have you click on File, New, Program to get into the Program Editor. You can pause this tutorial now if you want to and type in all of this information, starting with data count, input color, and the data lines. So what is this? We're going to create a data file called a data file called count. We're going to input a variable called color that is a string variable. The @ says continue reading the data until you hit a semicolon. Data line says the data is coming up. So here we looked at our M&Ms and we found a red one, a blue one, a green one, a yellow. So we've listed all the ones we found in the data with a semicolon. Then we're going to do create a simple chart using proc gchart. In this case, we're going to create a vertical bar chart, V-bar, on the variable called color. Again, that's the name of the color the variable we're creating. And we're going to give it a title. Title's in a little different place than where it was in our previous example, but nevertheless, it'll work. So again, type this in, make sure it looks good, make sure the colors that you know should appear in the right space, and then submit it. Now, this is the result. It's a little bit of a boring graph this time because most of the colors are the same except green. I don't know why green is always the least amount, it seems to me, because that's my favorite color. But this is what it should look like. Now let's change it a little bit. So you can, again, go to a new editor if you want to, or just change your current program. But let's look at how we're going to change this program. Again, we're just looking at some examples just to give you an overview of what a SAS program looks like, to say, hey, I've entered a SAS program and I can run SAS. And we're going to learn all the details about this later. We're going to create a data set called count, as we did before, but this time we're going to enter two pieces of information, input color and count. Notice color is a string variable, R. Count is how many there were. There were 5 reds, so that's what that means. Again, the @ says continue to read these pairs of data until you run out, semicolon. So we're going to read color, count, color, count, color, count. And so the data line says, okay, the data is coming up. After we end it with a semicolon, we're going to do proc G chart again, vertical bar chart color, but this time we have to add something new. This slash says, I'm going to give you some extra information. This information is that the variable count is the frequency. So in other words, that means there's 5 R's. It's telling you that the count means however many there are of color. So it reads color, count, and the count is the frequency. Now again, when you've entered this, you look at it very carefully, make sure all the colors are right, and it looks good. You run it, and you should get this kind of output. Again, green is the smallest one. I don't know why. All right, let's look at some tips and tricks for running SAS. So what I'm trying to do is give you as much information as I can, so that when you begin creating SAS programs and you start hitting errors or you don't know what's happening, you have these tips and tricks to help you out with it. First of all, you do need to realize that there are keywords that begin every statement, and they will appear in a dark color or dark blue. And also, every statement ends in a semicolon. It's like an English sentence you can think of. It always ends in a semicolon, just like a sentence ends in a period. So anything between the keyword data, for instance, and the semicolon is information that tells SAS what to do about that with that keyword. So proc print data temp is going to tell it somehow to print something called temp. And we're going to see this kind of formatting of these statements as we go along. Statements can begin anywhere and end anywhere. SAS is going to read them from the top down, however. They can continue over several lines, but they always end in a semicolon. Several statements can appear on the same line. Blanks, as many as you want, but at least one have to separate the components or word in the SAS program statement. You can use uppercase and lowercase. It doesn't matter. In fact, in the examples, we've seen I purposely used upper and lowercase sometimes just to show you that it doesn't matter within the statements. However, case will matter when you're creating data or you're entering data, like M for male. Uppercase and lowercase m means something different, so you have to be consistent there. The most common error in SAS is not putting a semicolon or putting it in the wrong place. So begin to pay attention to the semicolon and where it goes. A second one is a missing run statement at the end. You finish your analysis and you run it, but it doesn't actually work. Why? Because SAS is looking for that run statement to say, okay, this is the end of my program, complete the program. A third error is unbalanced quotation marks. If you use a double quote at the beginning of something, use a double quote at the end, either not finishing your quotation mark or using different kinds of quotation marks are both unbalanced errors. If you have an error, go to the program log and look from the top down to find where SAS found an error. It often appears in red, and you can see maybe where the error happens. If that happens, go back to your editor, simply correct the error in your code and rerun it. Occasionally, SAS will freeze up where you can't get it to respond to anything. Oftentimes you can do a control break, and that will free up SAS. It'll give you a dialog box that says cancel submitted statements. Choose yes. I would typically then save my SAS files, exit the SAS program, and restart. That sort of sets SAS at the beginning. Also, you might want to make the structure of your SAS program easy to read. You're going to see as we go through examples, sometimes we indent things that just help you read the SAS code better. The enhanced editor is going to give you clues as to your code and if it's correct. If something is in green, then SAS is going to ignore it because it thinks that's a comment. Dark blue is a major SAS keyword. Lighter blue is something within a SAS statement that has special meaning as a command within the statement. A yellow highlight shows you where your data are located, and a boundary line separates various sections of your SAS program. Now, if you're running on Windows, which we're assuming you are, Windows keyboards have function keys at the top, 1 through 12. These function keys can be used as shortcuts. For instance, if you press F6, SAS will take you to the log window. F7 takes you to the output window. F8 actually is a submit, so that's how you could submit instead of clicking on the running man. F12 is not defined, but we're going to create our own F12 here in just a second. And the reason we're doing that is it's going to come in handy as we're doing multiple programs in SAS, multiple examples. SAS tends to accumulate the output within the results viewer and also within the log. So if we run example after example after example, it starts getting very, very cluttered. So what we want to do is clean things up between examples. And that's what we're going to create an F12 key to do that. So the way you do that is you choose the Tools pull-down menu, choose Options and Keys, and you'll see a screen that looks a little bit like this that has all the keys on it. And notice that F12 should be blank if you've just loaded SAS. Go to that location and type in clear log semicolon, ODS results semicolon, clear semicolon, WPGM semicolon. Make sure everything's spelled correctly. And then press the enter key to lock in the new command. Make sure you press that enter key. Exit the key window, and now you have created a new function key called F12. And every time we run a program and then we want to get back to the editor, maybe to do some edits, or we finished an example, press F12 will clear out all of the information in the log and the output windows and take us back to the editor. And speaking of menus, I'm not going to go through this in very much detail because these are very similar to many other programs. The file menu is where you use for opening or saving files. Edit is like has things like a word processor, copy, cut, paste, things like that. You can do a replace text. The view menu allows you to go back and forth between windows. Tools, as we've seen, has a number of tools like the keys window. Run allows you to submit a program, and so forth, and down to a help menu. Some things that you do need to know about are SAS extensions. Just like when we save a word processing file, a Word file, it's saved as either .doc or .docx. An Excel file is saved as .xls or x. And so SAS programs are saved as .sas. Whenever you see a file .sas, it is a SAS code program. It's stored in ASCII text file, which can be read and edited in many other kinds of editors like Word or Notepad. The log file that is created is also an ASCII text file, and you can save it, and if you do, it will be saved as whatever file name .log. The results file is a web formatted output that's either saved as MHT or HTML. MHT stands for Microsoft Hypertext Markup Language. The SAS data file has a peculiar extension, SAS7bdat. This file contains not only the data, and we're going to learn how to create these files later on, but not only the data, but labels and other kinds of things within that SAS data file. Oftentimes, when you share data files with someone, or maybe you download a data file from a government database or whatever, it'll have this SAS7bdat extension. There's also what we call raw data files that contain ASCII pieces of data, .dat, .text, .csv, separated values, similar to an Excel program. We'll learn how to read those into SAS, and we'll also learn how to read typical Excel files as long as they're properly formatted, and we can read those into SAS. Finally, there is a help system within SAS that you can look at. It's got all sorts of information in it. However, I find it's sometimes easier and quicker to either go to Google or Bing or something like that and do a search. Type in SAS ANOVA code or something like that, and it will probably bring up dozens, if not hundreds, of examples of analysis of variance, ANOVA code that you could use to learn how to use SAS or some component of the PROC ANOVA. So that's chapter 1. So hopefully that has given you an overview of SAS, so you have a general idea of what SAS looks like. Now we're going to drill down into each component as we go from chapter to chapter, learning the details about how to construct a SAS program, how to edit a SAS program, and do all sorts of other kinds of things. So the next chapter is going to be getting data into SAS. So continue with these tutorials, and if you would please like this tutorial and subscribe to our channel, and we would appreciate that. And we will see you on the next tutorial. Thanks for being here.